right, good day and welcome to another episode of RoadFS Detail Memoirs, but it is our Business 101 series.
I should have worn a tie.
I know you should have with Prentice St. Clair, but how many detailers wear a tie?
I don't know, but I've got one that's a Jerry Garcia that's purple, and then I've got one that's a Winnie the Pooh tie. That's it. Funerals, weddings.
I think we talked about that at one point during one of these where I used to go to a late tip meeting with a coat and tie in the early days. And I told people, I take the wax off with my tie.
That's right. Exactly. It's a microfiber tie.
You have about 10 Jerry Garcia ties. I told my kids, no more ties. I don't want to wear a tie.
We'll talk to the rag company and see if we can get an official Prentice St. Clair detailing progress microfiber tie.
So super cool.
We're once again at the Business 101 series, and these have been awesome. We got some really good feedback so far.
Phenomenal feedback, especially the last one on compliance. So make sure you go check it out. This week we're talking about one of those other boring, discussions that most people avoid or ignore, and that is insurance.
No, we're talking training.
Oh, we're training. That's right.
We did
insurance is next time.
I was going to say, what the heck is this guy talking about?
No, training's a lot of fun. So insurance was last week. Sorry, my brain's
training is
everywhere.
One of those things that people talk about, but then they hesitate to do it. And we always get the same question. People will be like, I thought about doing training. Is it really worth it? And I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So let's just answer the question for everybody. If you've ever said, is training worth it? The answer is yes. It's always worth it. Always, always, always learn more. You're going to learn something no matter what. So even if you pick up one or two little tidbits, and I don't care if you've been doing it for 25 years. I've been in the room when Prentice has learned something. So
I've been in the room when Prentice is teaching, and I've learned something.
Absolutely.
And that's why we've turned to Prentice to help us.
You've been in the room when a light bulb went off over my head. Like,
when my light went
oh my
off.
Gosh, that's something I should do. So Prentice, let's talk about training, because you know a lot about that subject.
I do. I've been a trainer in the industry since 1999. 5 years previous to that, full time as a mobile operator. I still work on cars. I think it kind of makes me a bit unique from the standpoint of training, because there's a lot of fantastic trainers out there, but they don't really have a detail shop per se. And it doesn't make them bad, but just sort of a unique perspective from the standpoint of, why am I talking about myself? We're supposed to be talking about training. This is the bottom line.
You are the trainer extraordinaire.
Yes, because it says so somewhere on a shirt that I wear sometimes. Here's the thing about training, guys. Really, really important bottom line. You can do like I did and spend 3, 4, 5 years out on the road detailing, trying to pick up tips and tricks in here and there and become a pretty darn good detailer. Or you can go to a formal detailing program that's either a day, a couple of days, 3 days, 5 days, and get everything wrapped up in a bow. And then you're out, and then you're a professional right from the start. And hopefully that training includes a lot of the business stuff that we've been talking about. But the training, it just brings you to the next level very quickly. And I'll tell you, even if you're a seasoned professional, you can still learn new things from going to a one-day training event or going to Mobile Tech Expo and spending, a couple of days in all the seminars that we'll be putting on, or going to your local supplier's tech night or whatever it is that's going on around you. Even going to one of the formal training programs that are offered around the country. Like, Rennie and I have been trainers in the industry for years. I went to his training and I just counted 26 pages of notes.
Over 5 days.
Over 5 days. And I'm a trainer. Okay. So that's how much I learned, how much I felt it was important to write stuff down. And here's another thing. When you go to training events, not only do you learn from whoever's providing the training, you're going to learn from the other people there. And in fact, when I provide training, I always learn stuff from my attendees. Almost every single time I learn something in there. And sometimes it's pretty impactful what I learned from those folks. So we all learn from each other.
Yeah. And it may not be something I think people get the misconception of any kind of training, schooling, whatever, that you're going to go in there and all of a sudden the world's going to be opened up and there's, 800 pounds of stuff that fits in a 50-pound sack. Sometimes you go to a training and it's just a little tidbit here or there. I've had people ask me about the one-day trainings, and I'm glad you mentioned those because the one-day trainings are invaluable. First off, they get you an introduction. If Prentice is putting on a one-day training and you go to it and you like it, you're like, I want to learn more. So, and anybody, if you go to a one-day training, it's a smaller investment and you can kind of get an idea of what you're looking at a micro level. Mobile Tech Expo is a good example of that, or any of those where you can go, Southern Detailers Conference, Mobile Tech Expo, SEMA, anything where you can go and sit and learn from somebody else. I mean, I have been very, very fortunate because we know a lot of the people in the industry. And so I've been able to sit down on some stuff from Mike Phillips, from Prentice, from, Rennie Doyle, from Mark
Jason
Elliott,
Rose.
Jason Rose at the RoadFS Training Center. And I always highlight that one because it was incredible. We were at the RoadFS Training Center. I've got a polisher in my hand, Jason Rose behind me, Rennie Doyle behind me in the same time. I had Mark Elliott, the two Parker brothers, all standing behind me. And I was like, I'm really intimidated, but holy crap, the amount of knowledge that's behind me, that's watching me, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that was cool about that experience too was as they were watching you, Mark Elliott went over and went like this on your hand and literally barely touched your hand. He goes, just a little more pressure.
Right.
Right. And it's amazing how just a little more pressure, a little bit of technique. I remember when we were at Air Force One and Scott Masha was working with me, and I wanted to go this way. And the polisher was kind of walking on me. That's the way I'd done it. And he goes, why don't you just out of curiosity switch hands? And boy, I switched hands and all of a sudden I had better control of what I was working on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing with those little tips and tricks. I will say that a training event for detailing for the technical side of it should include a lot of process information. And I always try to include a lot of that. And I'm sure the other big hitters in the industry as on the training side do the same thing, because when you come out even of a one-day training event, you should have some step-by-step ideas about how to approach a car for standard detailing at least. And that's really what I focus on. So when you're investigating training places to go for training, that's one of the things that you really want to ask about is are you going to show me process and procedures? I need step-by-step instructions on how to take care of this. The one of the most rewarding training experiences that I've been involved in was a car wash out in Plymouth, Minnesota, where they called me. They saw one of my presentations somewhere and said, hey, we need your help. And it was taking them 10 hours to process a complete detail on a car. And that's with a couple of people working. Okay, so wow. I went out there and they did one of my 5-day formal training programs. And by the 4th day of the training program, they had cut that down to 5 hours.
Yeah,
during
wow.
the training event, they cut down the processing time by half. So that is really one of the big things you should get out of a training program, regardless of if it's 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, whatever it is. You should get a lot of process information that makes you more efficient and more effective in what you do, because that's the bottom line with detailing. The more time you spend, the less money you're making.
Yeah, and I think that is looking at that, and that's where Jody's talking about. Sometimes people look at this and go, "Well, that's boring," but if you can cut a detail by 2 hours, I mean, holy crap! That's one of the whole reasons that software, when we do trainings for software, the idea of putting an electronic software system in place is to cut down the time and make it so that you have more time to be making money and less time processing paper. And so I think the nice part about going to a formal training is, even if that's not how you do it, and I've seen people at trainings that were literally just like, I don't do it that way and it doesn't work for me. Watch somebody else's process, because you're going to pick up one or two little things that are going to make it way more efficient. And that's what
Yes.
you're trying to do. Just having a rolling cart that has all your products and have them lined up in the order that you're going to be using them. You think that's, oh, that's just anal retentive and that doesn't make any difference. Oh, it does. When you're hunting for product as opposed
Yeah.
to having it on you, a detailer's helper belt. So you have all your products in the right spot and you know that this one's over here and this one's over here and this is this towel and this is this towel. That kind of efficiency is completely invaluable.
It makes money.
Yeah,
It
and that's the
literally
bottom
makes
line
money.
is people are trying to make money at this stuff. That's what you're trying to do. So anything you can do to listen to professionals that can help you with that process. So in your training specifically, what do you focus on and what order do you focus on things throughout the 5 days?
Right. So my 5-day formal training program includes learning processes for what I call standard interior, exterior, and complete detailing. So I teach a standard process that is going to fit most cars that come into your shop or your mobile operation. And it's a step-by-step process, and we do it through demonstration and then hands-on supervised practice. So for example, on Monday, we'll spend half the day talking about business detailing in general, your business, your menu. I do a lot of work with the menu that might be already existing for somebody, or help them put together a menu if they don't have one, because the menu determines what your procedure is going to be. So if you've got 14 items on your menu, you have to have 14 different procedures. So my point is, let's do 3 items and then 3 procedures, and then have some extra stuff down here on the side that are custom add-ons. That's my big thing about menus. So we spend the first half of the first day going over all the overview stuff and then determining what the menu is going to be, because then that's what gets included in the training. That afternoon we do the prep wash and engine bay detailing. The next day we spend the whole day on interior. The next day we spend the whole day on standard exterior. Then the next day we spend the whole day on paint correction and probably do some ceramic coating at that point. And then the final day is a complete detail supervised practice. I want to see that you got what I'm talking about, including all the different chemicals that are involved, all the equipment that's involved, and the actual procedures, and also the way that you approach the car. There's also rules of motion. For example, dealing with the outside of the car. Whenever you're standing in front of the doors of the car, you start with the roof first. I can't believe how many times I have to yell at people about that in class. Why are you claying the side of the door when you haven't done the roof yet? Why are you polishing the side of the door when you haven't done the roof yet? Why are you putting ceramic coating on the door when you haven't ceramic coated the roof yet? It just makes sense. Do the roof first, work your way down. So that's a rule of motion. That's just one example. We go through all those on the inside of the car too. Everything has an approach and a rule of motion and a technique. And that's what I go over in my training. But it's so much more than that when I provide a 5-day formal training program, because it's all the business stuff. All the stuff that we're going over in this series, we go over placed in different places during that formal training based on the extent to what the customer needs. So I kind of customize my training based on, some people are really good at bookkeeping. They don't need a lot of work on that. Some people are great at marketing. They don't need an old man like me to tell them how to market. You're going to do those direct flyers, young man. And that newspaper print ad, which sometimes is valid, but, these days it's not as valid. So that's what my 5-day formal training program tries to do. But there's so many other options. I mean, I've got video training available too.
Exactly. And and the thing is that that's true, that there's multiple ways to get it. And I am of the belief that learning things in different ways is just as valuable. So being
Yes.
on-site learning in person in a 1-day, being on-site learning in person in a 5-day, learning online, watching a YouTube video, calling somebody on the phone, all of those things learn different parts of your brain. And that's what
Correct. So I always recommend getting training from multiple sources, because not any one person is not going to be able to give it to you all. Now, I tend to be biased. I think that my training program is pretty thorough, But I can tell you, you go to Tom Polanyi at Simon Eyes, you go to Bob Myers at Pro. As a matter of fact, Bob Myers is the first person that taught me about detailing years ago. Mike Pulaski at PDP. You go to Auto Geek. You go to Michael Stoops at McGuire's. You come out to one of the monthly P&S trainings that we have at P&S headquarters in Hayward. It's everyone's going to be a little bit different, but you got to go somewhere. And I've just mentioned a few that I took notes on. There are so many different detailed training programs out there for sure.
And I think part of it is to find somebody that fits your personality.
That's true. Yes.
Because sometimes there's certain people that train and they are, so if you go to Rennie Doyle's training and you have Rennie and Diane, that is a certain way of training and they are very, very thorough. You go to have someone instruct you like Diana Balboni, and she's very, very soft spoken. And some people don't react well to that, and other people react great to it. I think you have to find what your learning style is. Some people would love the video series because it's self-paced and they could really hone in and rewind, watch it again, rewind, watch it again. And I think that's important, is to kind of do that, feel that out, because we've been to some of the one-day trainings, and depending on who is doing the training and where you're at, it's a totally different thing. I've been to multiple of the P&S trainings, the one-day stuff, and if it's somewhere where we were in Utah, Rennie Doyle was doing it, was absolutely fantastic, but it was go, fast-paced. I've been at other places where, like Levi Gates, and it's very hands-on, but he's a little more mellow.
Right.
Kilmer,
Jason Kilmer's sanding training. If you want to learn how to stand, oh my gosh, that guy's phenomenal. And then, like with you, you're just kind of a down-to-earth, very approachable person and I think that people need to do that, is to do, like you said, multiple sources, go to different people to learn stuff. And every aspect of it is different. Everybody's an expert at different things. Kyle Clark on an RV versus Nathan Warren on a boat. You've got similar materials, but it's a different method. It's a different mentality when it's a boat versus an RV versus an airplane versus, polishing metal.
So one of the questions I have, and I think a lot of business owners ask this, they ask two questions. One, how do I know if it's a good program? And two, should I also train my team?
Interesting. So how do you know it's a good program? Well, I think first of all, you look at that person's background, who's doing the training, and see if there's any substance there. I would certainly recommend going to somebody who's a recognized trainer, an IDA recognized trainer. I mean, that's going to give some validity immediately. There's only about 35 of us in the world. These are folks that have been vetted through the IDA process to validate the fact that they are a recognized industry trainer. But then, references are important. What does that person do in the industry in general? Are they out there in the industry? Are they providing seminars and trainings for some of the for some of the events that we have, like Mobile Tech Expo and hopefully, well, not SEMA this year as much, but SEMA next year. Some of the different things that we do out there. One of the cool ways of getting in touch with a trainer is to go see them do a webinar or a presentation somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At Mobile Tech Expos, let's say you want to vet Tom Polanyi or a Jason Rose or a Rennie Doyle. Go see what is their presentation style like.
Yeah.
Is it thorough? Does it make sense to you? That's a really interesting thing. There have been a number of people over the years. I've been doing presentations at conventions for years, for decades, and people will come up to me afterwards and say, that made sense to me. I really understand what you're talking about. That's gratifying to me because that means I communicated it well. But I know sometimes what stuff that I say doesn't make sense to people because we don't communicate the same way. That's okay. Yeah. So a really easy way to vet somebody is to look at a webinar maybe that they've done for the IDA, or see them in person at a presentation. You really don't have as much expense in that, but then you get to kind of see their teaching style and if it makes sense to you. Or go to a one-day event or a special presentation event that they're doing, and then if it makes sense, then you go back and do a more formal training with that individual or that school, whichever one it might be. Now, one of the things in training that you need to consider, especially if you're going to be bringing employees, is where is the training going to be? Okay. Do you have 5 people that you need to bring to a training event? That's fine, but that can get really expensive, especially if it's out of state and you got travel costs. So there are a few of us that actually go out on the road, and that's my favorite way of doing it. You know, if you're in Texas, if you're in Florida, if you're in Rhode Island, if you're in Minnesota, the detailing atmosphere is completely different in each one of those places.
Yes.
So for you to come to San Diego or to Hayward, California, and for me to teach you a way to detail a car, you're going to go back and say, that doesn't work here. We got different atmospheric conditions, and our customers are different. So what I like to do is go out to the location, even if possible ahead of time, and kind of evaluate the whole situation. Who are the customers like? What are they looking for? What is your weather like? What is your shop like? Okay. And then come back and say, okay, number one, we need to get your shop up to speed with chemicals and equipment. Let's get all that in place. Then I'll come out for 5 days. We'll train you on all that new chemicals and equipment and take into account what kind of vehicles are coming in. What do they need? What do the customers generally want? What do 80% of the customers want in your neighborhood where you're working? That's what you need to focus on and develop a process and a training program that satisfies that 80% of the people out there. All right. So that's all of that is included in a good training program.
Yeah. And a lot of times is if people don't notice, like for instance, if I got to send 5 people to a training, right? And we do this for training on our software. Sometimes people will recommend that we come out and work through the process that they have to see if the electronic, if the invoicing system and all that inventory management is it would cost you so much money to send 5 people out to our place as opposed to paying one of us to fly out there. I mean, you know, here's the cost differential, 1 to 5. It makes sense to get people on site and really
it's the customization part of it too, because then we are at your location seeing exactly what goes on, which may change some small aspects of what we're teaching you because your situation is different than what I normally see back at my own shop in San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one I was going to mention when you were saying is to watch a presentation by theirs is you might want to subscribe to, I don't know, RoadFS Detail Memoirs and look back through the hundreds of memoirs and see if one of these people or most of these people have been on, and watch the 30-minute presentation and kind of listen to their style, right? They're watching you right now, and you're no different in person than you are on this. I mean, you're, like I said, very approachable, soft-spoken, and you know, the instruction is pinpoint. Well, yeah, it's pinpoint. I mean, I've been there when you've corrected me or someone else.
I'm going to back up from the microphone a little bit. I'm soft-spoken? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and I've seen that, but it's very pinpoint directed at what you're doing. The correction is, hey, you need to do this instead of that. Right. It's not
I can definitely be intense, but it's because I'm trying to get a point across. Look, you've got to understand the way to do this.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to go back and struggle, and you're going to ask me later. So, but that's the only time
it's going to take 10 times as long, or you're going to damage the vehicle, or you're going to do something that's don't do that. When somebody tells you that in a training, don't do that. You want to listen. I mean, the famous one everybody talks about is Diane Doyle. Do not lean on the car. Period. But there's a reason for that. Right. You're damaging the paint. Knock it off.
Just fixed.
You know, so it's very, and it sticks in your head, and that's a very it's what people need, because sometimes people don't think about that. You know, hey, you got your shirt tucked in and you're wearing a belt. No, not going to fly. You know, you're wearing a ring and you're wiping down a car. There's a spot that's going to be in there. Just little silly things that you don't think about, and I don't think people understand that it is very. It is down to the details. No pun intended. It is down to the details.
It's a detail in progress.
How you can make it more efficient and get that one out the door and the next one in. That's right.
That's
there.
right.
Look straight
right
up
there.
above, detail in progress. So I think the key to this is that this isn't like media press, right? The old adage, there's not bad press. There is bad training. Right? If you see somebody using a brush and they're dipping it in a bucket and they're scraping the side of the car like they're at the old quickie car wash, that is bad training. Don't do that. There's some stuff on the internet that's sketchy, and you're going to have to vet that out. But
Consider the source.
yes.
Yeah, that's
And
important.
it's really easy to ask. It's really easy to ask somebody that is, like you said, IDA, CD, SV, RT, recognized trainers. There are like 35 of them. They're all approachable. You can send them an email. You can get a hold of them. Ask Prentice. He will tell you if that person over there is,
Well, and
And
that's a shout out to the IDA, right? Because
Yeah.
one of the things that the IDA is trying to do is set up certified training programs that you can go and make sure that you are, like you shared, following a process, doing the techniques appropriately, and addressing the customer appropriately. So I think it's really important that you look at all of those resources. But to your point, where are those resources coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What is their background? What is their motive? What are they trying to do to help you grow your business?
Yeah, if you've got, Joe Detailer in the middle of a field showing you how to use a pressure washer versus, somebody like a Michael Stoops in a beautiful training center, which one are you going to listen to? All right. So I gotta say one thing, because we get a lot of confusion with the International Detailing Association and what we do and do not provide. You use the term setting up certified programs. The IDA does not set up programs.
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Okay, that's okay. I'm just catching that so nobody has a misunderstanding. What the IDA does is it has some minimum qualifications for somebody to be a recognized trainer, and they have to actually do an application process and have to have a minimum number of years as a publicly known detailing instructor in the industry, and a number of other things that go into that before you become a recognized trainer. And I will say there's a lot of detailing operators who think that they get their CD, they get their SV, and then they can go for their RT. And that's not an automatic progression. RT is a very different thing. And we might even change the name of that's coming up. To recognize industry trainer as opposed to just recognized trainer. And then the other thing is that the IDA also has certified detailing training centers, which is sort of the same thing. A training center like PDP in Ohio can actually apply because they have an existing center that's been in operation for a number of years, well known, and they have to go through a whole vetting process to be one of the recognized training centers through the IDA. The IDA didn't set up that training center.
Right.
Was to look at it and say, okay, obviously this is an excellent training center. They know what they're doing. They're industry providers of industry training. And so we're going to say, yes, this is an IDA recognized training center. So that is also something to look out for. That's if you want to go somewhere for your training, you want to go, preferably to a recognized training center. And I will say this, I'm not saying that you have to hire somebody that's willing to come out to you to get good training. Excellent training centers out there. Like I said, Simonize, Tom Palanci's got a great program. Michael Stoops. There's a number of training centers, other places that may not even be involved with the IDA that provide great detail training. So don't think that you have to hire somebody to come out to your location. You can go to a training center, and typically that's going to be a little bit less money. For a 5-day formal training program, guys, we're talking easily a few $1,000s for a good program. But that you've got to think of it not as an expense, but as an investment in your future. Okay,
absolutely. And if you can figure out how to save even an hour per detail, think about how many details you do a year. Yeah, we went through a process with a guy where we asked him to formally look at how much time he was spending just on processing invoices, and he saved 20 minutes per invoice. And he literally kept saying to me, "It's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal." When he added up how many invoices and he looked at the hourly wage that somebody took to process that 20 minutes, and he multiplied it by his 15 people and 1 year, he literally turned white. He's like, there is no way I pay $200,000 a year. And I said, I didn't do the math. You did. So that's something you've got to look at. It is totally an investment. It's like buying a new machine, right? It's you have to do it. Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I have a question that comes up, and this is, this is one of those that's touchy, and I'm not talking about any specific brand of products, but I've had a question that came up of, okay, so should I go to a training that's held by a product company for their product? And I've only been to a couple of them, and I know of, well, several of them, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and answer my own question of, let's take ceramic coatings, for instance, and a company is providing a training to be a certified installer for their ceramic coating. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh boy. All right. So how do I do this and be politically correct? I would rather answer the question that you started with, which is, should I go to a brand specific training program?
Sure. Go ahead.
And I would say, let me even back up a little bit farther than that. Number one, when you're considering going to a training program, they should be able to offer you a set of learning objectives and an outline. What are they going to go over, and what are the learning objectives? That should give you an idea of what you're going to get when you go there, or what you're supposed to get. That's what a learning objective is. By the time you leave here, you will understand how to apply XYZ coding. All right. You will have a process to do that. That's a learning objective. Right. So then you start getting into the more specific question. Should I go to the Pro Training Center? Should I go to the Simonized Training Center? Should I go to Ardex? Should I go to Malco? Should I go to PNS? And you look at these companies, and every single one of those chemical companies is a reputable company, especially if they're a supplier member of the IDA. Right. They've got some reputation. Okay. So I don't think you're going to get a bad training from one of the big manufacturers of chemicals. Right. Now, we'll focus on their chemicals.
Sure.
But hopefully their training also is generic enough that it tells you that it's not just this brand X of carpet cleaner that is the one you need to use. This is a carpet cleaning chemical. And you should be able to go to any chemical company and look up their carpet cleaning chemical and say, oh, I know how to use that. I don't care whose company it comes from.
Yep.
Okay. So that, I think that's true, going out on a limb a little bit, but I think that's true of all the major detailing chemical manufacturers, is that, they're going to give you training on their products, but you should be able to have a generic understanding of how to use an all-purpose cleaner. And what kind of all-purpose cleaner should you be using? Should you be using the highly corrosive all-purpose cleaners? No, use the one that's milder. Okay, that kind of thing.
Well, and the added benefit to that is you get exposed to potential products and or systems that are a right fit for you and your area.
Right.
Right. And so unless you invest in yourself and consider those options, I mean, how many people have been doing something the same way over and over, year after year, and the chemicals and the systems and the polishers have enhanced? They've improved.
Yes,
and if you're still doing it the way you did 10 years ago, you're missing out at an opportunity for you and your business.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I was hoping you'd answer that question. And by the way, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. So that is absolutely because that's what I found, is that every one of them that I've gone to, no matter who the manufacturer, if you are going to a quality manufacturer of products, they are, yes, teaching you about product X, which they would love you to use, but this is applicable to all in this area. Iron type of removers. Don't spray it directly on ceramic brake pads. You're going to corrode them. People won't be able to use them. Do this, do that. They're giving you specific training on the chemical properties and not just on their product.
Well, it should be the techniques should be generic, and that should be applicable to any company.
Yes, and absolutely, that's the best way to do that. So,
and I'll tell you what, those of you that have been using the same chemicals for years, you really do need to branch out and look at some other companies, because most of these major manufacturers that I've been mentioning have had incredible breakthroughs in the last 10 years in individual aspects of their chemical line. Some companies focus on cleaners, some companies focus on polishes, but each one has had terrific enhancements in their products. And we've had even completely newly developed types of products chemicals come out that make our jobs easier and allow us to do more things for our customers, which means, guess what? Making more money. Yeah. So let's go back to ceramic for just a minute, because you talked about ceramic coating.
Yep.
So, ceramic coatings, number one, is an opinion-filled arena.
Really,
Really?
really, huh?
Okay, you get five different ceramic companies in the same room, and you better have boxing gloves and bouncers to get them off of each other. So it's a touchy subject, but I think each person who's trying to learn how to use ceramic coating, you need to look at what are your goals. Do you
Yep.
need to buy an exclusive territory in your area for several $1,000s and a pallet full of stuff? Is that going to help your business? Or maybe you go to like a one-day ceramic coating certification class where they teach you how to use that company's ceramic coating, which, by the way, usually is going to translate over to most ceramic coatings. The
Yes.
methodology is pretty much the same
Right.
across the different coatings. Where your financial commitment is maybe $500, $600, $1,000 versus several $1,000s. And then you can go back home and decide, well, do I want to use this company's coating, or do I want to buy some of this company's coating and use the same procedures that I learned over here using this stuff? So
Right.
I think you really got to look at what your goals are in providing ceramic coating services to your customer. Now, I'll say this on a personal level. Like I say, when I'm not teaching, I'm working on cars. And so it took me a little while. It takes me a long time to adopt things. I'm an old guy, and it takes me a time to, that this Insta face gram book, all that nonsense. But anyway, with ceramic coatings, it took me a while to actually start doing them, and other people around me were blowing it out of the park. But once I started doing ceramic coatings, you have got to get into it if you're not into it. The profit potential is unbelievable. The results are stunning. That's in a word. If you do it right, the results are absolutely stunning, and your customers are going to be blown away. And I'm blown away every time I do it.
Right.
Like, I didn't know that. How is it possible? I just did a roof on a 2013 Volt. It was completely oxidized, base coat, clear coat. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this. Well, with some good chemicals and a good pad and a good machine, we were able to make that roof look pretty shiny, and then follow up with 2 coats of ceramic coating, so it's going to stay that way for years to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the key to
it blew
that,
my own mind. Like, I didn't know I could do that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
and I think the key to that is that's when you do need to be communicating with the particular chemical company that's producing that ceramic. Because like you talked about 2 coats, can you put 1 coat on top of the other? Should you polish in between? What are the properties of this? What is a 1 year versus a 5 year? There's a lot of information out there, and it can be very confusing. But what I have found, and I am not, it is, I've talked to several companies. I haven't talked to all of them, but the companies that you're mentioning, the PNS and Bob Myers and Onyx and some of the companies that are out there now, they will answer those questions. And I think that is what's really important. Can you get a hold of a person to talk to them about the individual properties of that coating, and what, like you said, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to fix an oxidized roof and make it look as good as possible? Do you have a brand new car that just came from the dealership and you're just trying to preserve it? I talked to a guy the other day that is now using, and I don't know why I hadn't heard of this before, but I was like, great idea. He's taken ceramic coating, and that's what he uses after he restores headlights. So restore the headlights, put ceramic coating on it. You got a protectant because you're destroying that plastic when you do that. And I'm like, that's fabulous. Which one should be the best? I mean, should you use a 5-year coating on headlights? Who knows?
And I'll tell you, the jury's still out on that. I just started. I didn't just start, but probably within the last year or two, I've been applying ceramic coating to my headlight restorations. I used to do clear coat, actual spraying on clear coat, because I also do paint work on cars. But the clear coat honestly didn't last, and it started peeling back from the edges, so I stopped using that. Now I'm doing ceramic. So I'm still in an experimental stage. I've heard mixed reviews from other people. I think with headlight restoration, and then there's different plastics. For some reason, there's some headlight plastics that will, after you clean them up and protect them, they'll last for years, and others, you look at it 2 years later, it's exactly the way it was 2 years ago.
Well, and that's the whole thing is we get advances every year. And I always tell people we are 1 or 2 advances away from another innovation.
Yep.
One of the big questions that we'll leave hanging and maybe not try to answer today is, why should I even do paint correction if I'm going to do ceramic coating? Shouldn't it fill in some of those small micro scratches and things like that? So these are why you would go to training. So ask the questions. That's, I think the biggest thing is like any kind of learning, training, schooling you're doing, you have got to ask questions. If you want to know something, ask the question and be humble about it. There's so many people that are cocky, but it's because they don't have the confidence they need and they are afraid to ask a question. So they come across overly confident. Ask the questions. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. Should I do that? Hey, Prentice, I was going to do the same thing. I was going to put my, clear coat on headlights. What did you find? And should I use this or that? Ask people's opinions, especially people that have been in the industry for a number of years and that have that RT,
I think one of the things, and this is kind of underlying, but I think it's important to note, you as a business owner need to invest in yourself. Years ago when Rod and I first started Zenware and RoadFS, we went to a 5-day event sponsored by Zions Bank that helped us look at our business from the perspective of a bank. We also recently went through, I'm a certified edge coach. Rod and I did the DISC assessment together. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to look at each other's personality types so that we could better communicate not only with each other, but also with our team. And so as a business owner, as a leader, you need to be investing in yourself. What are you doing to improve your game? Jonah Gomez with Detailpreneurs, every Monday night on Instagram, he goes live and he shares something that he's personally working on and then sharing that with the people. So investing in yourself is a critical thing. And that's kind of what this underlying training is. But I think a lot of times we just go, I'm the boss, I'll figure it out. Instead of going, you know what, there's things that I don't know. There are things that I need to double down on that I'm good at. And maybe there are things that I'm not so good at, like reading contracts and agreements and getting into the nitty gritty. I'm not good at that. That's why I have somebody else do that. Right. So recognizing where you're good and where you're not, and either fill in the gaps by getting the training you need or having somebody on your team support you in that area.
Yeah. There's really two things that you can go to training for. One is the technical aspects of detailing, which all of us can improve on. We all can improve on that. Just learning how to do a car better, faster, get it done. One of my mottos is better results faster. Okay. And then the other side is all the business stuff that we've been talking about. So there's two sides of it where you can get training. And then, the other thing that going to a training event is ultimately going to do, regardless of where you go, it should help you have more confidence in your ability to provide excellent service, which translates into the ability to charge what's appropriate for what the service that you're providing. And it's almost an automatic thing. I get around other detailers. We start talking about packages and pricing and what we're doing and the level of service. And you just have a sort of a puffing up of that confidence, so when the next time the phone rings, instead of saying $250, you're willing to say $350. And then all of a sudden that's your normal charge. You just increased your price by $100 just by getting that confidence of being around other people and going through a training event and giving yourself more abilities so you can charge more. And I'm not talking about gouging the customer. I'm not talking about just marking up prices just because, but like I've been in community for a number of years and I keep raising my prices because my service becomes more valuable. Yeah, there's lots of other detailers that come into the community and charge a lot less than I do. I don't really care because I've got my customers and they pay my price because they know my level of service and they like my level of service and they like me. So a training goes to that. That's another bonus, sort of a side benefit of going to a training, is increasing your confidence.
No, I love that.
Right. Because you're not getting paid to put a coating on a car. You're getting paid for the years of knowledge and knowing how to take care of that car and make it look like you expect it to look when it comes out. That's what you're paying for. The coating is minimal. It's the experience and the knowledge. And unless you have the training, you don't have the knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. So in final wrap up, is there any last words of wisdom that you care to share about training? Because I mean, we could obviously continue to go on, but
well, I mean, you know, as a trainer in the industry for 22 years, I can say that I'm a big fan of training. I go to training.
Mhm.
I go to other people's stuff because I know I can always learn more from other people. And really, the bottom line is, if you're struggling or you're starting out, you know, why don't you cut some of those years of trying to learn stuff on your own? Just cut that short by 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and take your business seriously and start being able to provide the level of service as soon as possible, the maximum level of service that you can provide, which means the maximum amount of profit right away, as opposed to waiting 2, 3, 5 years down the line when you have more experience. That's what
Right.
training gives you. It gives you that shortcut to more money.
Yep,
that's awesome.
absolutely. So
Well-
there you go. In wrap up, we could have just said that at the beginning. Training is a shortcut to more money. Send the check.
Send the check, baby.
So before we wrap up, again, this is a multi-part series. You should not only subscribe to the channel so you can get all the notifications and help us out, but you should ask 4 friends to subscribe as well, because they all need it. So encourage other people to subscribe so that we can get more people watching this. Appreciate everybody that's asked us questions along the way. Keep those coming, and as we continue with the series, we will answer those questions as we roll. So send them to Prentice at detailinginprogress.com.
It's right
Yep,
there. Yeah,
right there.
And really, honestly, any of you listening who have questions, you can. That's my email. Send me a question. Call me. My phone number should be somewhere around here. You can find it on the internet pretty easily. It's right here next to me all the time. The bat phone is right here. So call me, text me. I really like to help the industry. I don't want to just sign you up for my training. I want to help you do better, whether it's a 5-minute conversation or, if you're thinking about going to a training school down the street and you just don't know for sure, let's talk. I'm sure it's fine, but let's talk. I love answering questions.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And like Rod said, please like, share, and subscribe. And we will check you guys same time, same bat channel, just next week on RoadFS Detail Memoirs Business 101 series. Thanks, Prentice.
Thank
See
you.
ya.